Hi, I'm Steve Jones, advocate with Redgate Software. In this short video, I want to show you how I compare versioning my schema in SQL Source Control, which I have open here, and Flyway Desktop, which I have right here. Now, I've got a project in both of these that is linked to the same database. So this actually is a JDBC connection, but I'm using localhost SimpleTalk 1 dev, and I have no changes found and nothing to commit in version control. In Management Studio, here's my SimpleTalk 1. This is my local host, the default instance. I've got this linked as well there. I've got into this folder. And so this has no changes, as it'll show here in just a second. But let me show you a couple of differences with what's going on. So in Flyway Desktop, I can actually do this and I'll see my folder. It'll open me up, and then I have my schema model to my Git repository. And you can see here I've got tables, functions, views, all that stuff that's normally there. Now, I don't have an easy way to do this in SQL Source Control, but I can pop open this folder. That's where it's linked, and you can see same thing here. I have the tables listed here, and these in fact would match up with the tables listed here. So I've got the T-SQL-T framework here. It's filtered out in Flyway Desktop by default, but you can see that I've got a very similar view of what's going on there. Right, all these tables are in fact the same up to the T-SQL-T one. So let's look at how I would version something. So in SQL Source Control, let's just create a new folder here. And we are not in the right place, but let's do that here. We'll say my SimpleTalk dev. We'll create a new table, and we'll do something brand new here, and we'll call this Flyway Desktop Comparison, and we'll make it something simple. A simple table here, right? That's added a table into this side. If I were to look in SQL Source Control now, I would in fact see that table listed here. I would say it's a new table. We'll see that view. If I look in Flyway Desktop, I'll see the exact same thing here. We'll refresh this, and this will run a comparison that will look at what I've got in my project and then what I have in the database as well, and then we'll see the difference here. Of course, now that I'm recording, this is running slower, but if I were to pick this table, we see the same thing. Now, it's slightly different. Here's this project schema model here. Here's what's new. In here, we see what is in the database and then what's in source control. So these are slightly reversed here, but in either case, I can save these. Now, if I do this, new desktop table, I'm committing this to the actual Git system there. Okay, and so in that case, I've committed this changes. And in fact, if I had other changes in the repo, I could have a message pop up to say there are changes outside of SQL Source Control. In Flyway Desktop, I can save this to the project, but it isn't actually committed to Git yet. So what it'll do is it'll write this to the file system, and now you'll see I have next steps, which are commit changes or generate migration. In the commit changes, you can see that I actually have the place here to enter this in. Now, we've separated this out because this gives me the chance to make multiple changes before I commit something. So for example, if I was doing this and I said, oh, I forgot to do something else, let's come in here and say, create procedure as get Flyway. Whoops, I don't want the as there, as select star from. Right, horrible procedure, but that's the case. In SQL Source Control now, if I see this new proc, and I did this, I have two commits now for that, even though there's related. In Flyway Desktop, if I were to come back to the schema model and I say refresh this, it is a separate IDE, right? I do have to flip over here, but now I realize, hey, this was this other change that I want to save to the project. Now, if I wanted to commit these two different things, I could commit them as one commit. And so if I were to come over here, we'll see now there are two things in there that I might want to commit in there. I've got a table and I've got a store procedure. I could say one commit for Flyway Desktop. And then I can version these out. Now, if I look in my file system, let's look at the tables here. There's my Flyway desktop comparison table that I created. And if I were to look at this, let's just do it in code. What I'll actually see is that here is the table. Let's get rid of this stuff. That's that simple table that I did. In my other area, I've got it as well, right? And if I open this in code as well, I see something very similar. There's the same type of thing. Okay, so I've done these in two different places, but they both exist there. Same thing for the store procedure, right? Get Flyway is here. And if I were to come back into my SOC one and modify this, we would see that get Flyway procedure in there as well. Now, the difference to me in looking at this is if I look at get log here, right? New proc, new Flyway table. These are two different items. Whereas if I were to come here and look at my get log, I have one commit, right? There was my initial commit. Let's close a couple of these things. One commit that has two items in it. This one has two. So that having that flexibility is nice. The other nice thing in Flyway Desktop is that if I had changes outside of Flyway or outside of Management Studio or something else, I could see those changes. So let's do one more thing here. So we'll fix this. Let's do this. We'll say alter table. Sorry. Committing triple things. Flyway. It's of course wanting me to do stuff there. Let's do this. I have something else run because I have another thing running. It doesn't want to do that. Desktop comparison, add my cars. So we'll add this in there. And now if I'll come in here, we'll refresh the suggestions again there because I can't do that. So I have both of those, and these will be an alter, of course. So I've made a couple of changes here. In source control, right? This automatically refreshes when I change that. I have control in Flyway Desktop, and let's actually start that process. Here are two changes that I've got with two changes. We can commit this, but before I do that, I want to show you something else. Let's actually come back here and schema model refresh this. So in my control, what I'll see here is two changes as well, where I've got these two changes, right? That I've added a column there and I've altered this store procedure. We'll save these to the project. Now what I want to do is I want to just show you. So this is my Flyway Desktop project here. I'm going to do Notepad. Let's go back one here. So I've got stuff here, Notepad, readme.md. We'll say new repo for Flyway Desktop. So I'll save that there. If I were to look at my get status here, what you'll see is I have a readme as well as these in place. Okay. And if I come to my other one, let's quit that and we'll go back. Here I have cd to get status. We'll do notepad readme.md here as well, and we'll say sock repo. My get status here will say that this readme is untracked. Okay. In here, if I go to commit this, it's just going to commit it, right? Because most of us have closed that. And if I look here, it's still not tracked. I have this other item that is there. I'd have to do a git add readme.md and then git commit new file. And then if I look, it'll be clean and my git log has these other things in there. In Flyway Desktop, if I come here, what it does is it sees everything. And now I could uncheck or check this to commit. Uncommit 3 files. Again, I have control here in how I want to version things out, and I'll commit those in there. And then I see the same thing that if I were to look into here, right, git log 1 commit 3 files, 1 commit with 2 files here, whereas here I've got the new file I've committed separately, the second commit there. If this file were tracked, then I wouldn't necessarily see the commit happening here in SQL source control. But in this way, I have the ability to still source control things in most ways as I like to do them. I have the ability here to make my changes and then commit them in SQL source control, or I can make the changes and get the schema model changes here, and then I would commit them in version control here as well. So hopefully this has helped you understand how SQL source control and Flyway desktop work in a similar manner to version code. But if not, please feel free to reach out to me and I'm happy to answer questions. I've been Steve Jones here, an advocate for Redgate software.